Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today's Sunday and it's January the 19th, 2025. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a return viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. Feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Well, this year I'm planning to do a few things differently. Now, every once in a while, I plan to take my viewers back on a trip down memory lane by reviewing news stories from decades ago that may still be relevant today. And while exploring new topics for my audience, I somehow became interested in presidential pardons, and for obvious reason. It was current, it was trending, the topic was trending. Now, there was a report a few days ago that President Biden had granted pardons to 37 of the 40 people who were on death row. But that report was not really accurate because there are four additional death row inmates, all service members, who were not counted in that number. And they had not been considered for presidential pardons. They remain on death row today. But to be honest, it was not the idea of having the sentences commuted to life in prison that caught my attention. I really wanted to know who these service members were and what they had done to find themselves on a list awaiting execution. Now, these are the facts. Military data on death row inmate states as follow. One, the military has not carried out an execution since 1961. Currently, there are four service members awaiting execution, and three of them are from Fort Liberty here in North Carolina. So this is going to be my focus for the next several weeks. We're going to focus on those soldiers from Fort Liberty, those three soldiers from Fort Liberty who will remain on death row, and the fact that they were not considered for presidential pardon. But we're going to talk about one at a time just to make sure that these videos becomes a comprehensive overview of that particular service member. So I'll provide you with a summary here, and as always, I'll identify some of my sources for you in the description box. And as we begin exploring this topic and the different videos relating to the presidential pardon and the soldiers who are on death row, I plan to introduce some information. I plan to speak specifically about the charges that each soldier faced, and as a result, there may be some sensitive information presented. So I want to appeal to my audience that if some of the information you may find triggering, but I want to say to you, if at any time you become anxious about the material, I want to invite you to log off. And remember, you can always log back on at a later date and pick up where you left off. So let's begin with the service member who has been on death row the longest. He is Private Ronald Gray, age 59. He turned 60 this coming August 2025. Private Gray was convicted and sentenced to death in 1988 by a general court martial at Fort Bragg, currently known as Fort Liberty. Now, this means that he has been on death row for 37 years. At the time of his conviction, Gray was an Army specialist and a cook assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division. According to reports, Gray killed 4 women and tried to kill at least one more. He was convicted in both a civilian court and then a military court and it started back in 1987 when he was first convicted by the courts in Cumberland County here in North Carolina. And at that time, he pled guilty to 22 felonies, including 5 counts of RAPE, 2 counts of murder, and he received a total of 8 life sentences. And the murders in this case here were of 2 civilian women who were his neighbors in a mobile home park. So that took place, that was the first case. But we're going to focus on the military court martial because that took place a few months later, and that's where he was given the death penalty. And that spring in 2008, Private Ronald Gray faced a military court martial on the base at Fort Bragg, now known as Fort Liberty. And here's a summary of the charges that he faced. So the first victim was Private Laura Lee Vicky Clay. She disappeared from the base on Fort Bragg on December the 15th, 1985. And on that day, two witnesses saw her at a local Kmart with a man later identified as Gray. Her car was found the next morning a block away from her home, and it appeared to have been driven through the woods, and they say the driver's seat was found to be pushed back much further than the victim would have done. Three fingerprints matching the suspect were found on the hood of the vehicle as well. Now, 2 days later, another soldier found the victim's half-naked and decomposing body in the nearby woods on the base. She had been raped, sodomized, and shot in the neck, forehead, chest, and the back of her head. She had also suffered blunt force trauma to various parts of her body. She died a horrible death. And they say the weapon used was a 22 caliber pistol, and it was found approximately 60 feet away, and they had traced that weapon back to one that had previously been stolen by the suspect. And there was a second victim just a few days later. She was identified as Private Marianne Lang Nemeth, and on the evening of January the 3rd, 1987, the suspect entered the room of the victim under the pretense that he needed to use the restroom. Once in the room, he grabbed the victim, held a knife to her throat, and demanded her military figure. The suspect then tied the victim's hands and feet using a cord from a curling iron, removed her clothing, and sexually violated her. He then stabbed her repeatedly in the neck and side and threatened to return to kill her if she screamed. The victim's injuries were very severe, but she survived. She suffered a lacerated trachea and a collapsed or a punctured lung. And shortly after this encounter, the victim saw the suspect's picture in a newspaper in relation to another crime, and she immediately identified him as the person who had attacked her. And the crime spree continued with yet another victim just 4 days later. It was another female, but she was a local taxi driver. This one was a civilian. Her name was Kimberly Ann Ruggles, and on the evening of January the 7th, 1987, she was dispatched to pick up a passenger named Ron at the suspect address. In the early mornings, and we're speaking about a few hours later, the following morning, military police officers on a routine patrol discovered the victim's empty taxicab parked on the edge of some woods. Her nude body was discovered a short distance away. She had been raped, sodomized, beaten, and stabbed several times. They say the victim's mouth had been stuffed with a cloth belt that matched a pair of karate pants they had found on the suspect's possession a few days later. The suspect's fingerprints were found in the interior door handle of the car, and the victim's fingerprints were found on money in the suspect's possession. His footprints was also found at the scene. So now Private Gray was facing a total of 14 charges to include 3 counts of RAPE, 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, burglary, and a few other charges. And in late March of 1988, a court-martial consisting of 6 military members convened to hold him accountable for his crimes. And at that court-martial, he was found guilty as charged. And his sentence included the following: being put to death, a dishonorable discharge, total forfeiture of all pay and benefits, and a reduction in grade to private. And what followed was the submission of several appeals, which is guaranteed for any death row inmate. Now, Gray first appealed his death sentence to the United States Army Court of Criminal Appeal, stating that his sentence was unconstitutional because the court-martial had less than 12 members. He stated that the 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments do not permit military subordinates to serve as members of a court-martial in a capital case. He stated he was denied the right to select the members of his own court-martial. He also claimed ineffective counsel, stated that he was incompetent to stand trial, and he also claimed misconduct by the presiding judge. His appeal was denied. And several appeals followed as Gray waited out his time at the disciplinary barracks, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He even requested to present his case to the Supreme Court in 2001, and the Supreme Court refused to hear him, but they did not specify a reason for their denial. And several years later, Gray was eventually assigned a scheduled execution date. The big date was December the 10th, 2008, but just 12 days before the December 10th date, on November the 26th, for reasons that were unclear, it was reported that the United States District Court in the state of Kansas issued a stay of execution. And that stay of execution remained for 8 years until it was removed by a federal judge in 2016. And several additional appeals have followed since then, all denied. Even another appeal to the Supreme Court was denied. Gray was issued a lifeline in 2021 when then President Joe Biden issued a moratorium on federal execution, but time is definitely running out. And that's because we have a new president, President Donald Trump, and he has issued an executive order stating that federal executions are to resume. Now, time is definitely running out for Ronald Gray. Now, if the outgoing President Joe Biden had planned to retain or give him another lifeline, he would have commuted his sentence, but that was either overlooked or ignored. We simply don't know. But what we do know is that it won't be as long as it has been, and so he awaits, and he's awaiting his turn. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our history lesson for today. Currently, there are a total of 4 service members, our soldiers, who are currently on death row, awaiting execution. 3 of them are from Fort Liberty. Out of Fort Liberty, the 3, 2 of them are black. We brought the first one today. He's been on death row the longest. He's Private Ronald Gray. But stay tuned for future videos because we'll be discussing them all right here on this YouTube channel. And that's all I have for you right now. Feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video. And by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks just like this one, that's the notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.